Outlaw Country by Ghotty. Chapter 18, Gunboat Diplomacy. Emily marched me into the throne room alongside you and Lao Lang. I was cleaner than I had literally ever been and felt deeply uncomfortable, skin itching from a deep cleanse. I wasn't too enthused about throwing my way into a mess of politics, but it was still better than being naked and trapped in that bathhouse. I never asked who he was, the man that was in the bath. I hoped I never found out. Remember, Mr. Jones, take 5 steps forward and bow, nagging Emily, attempting to drill me on decorum. I had no intentions of respecting, left arm to the waist, palm facing up, right arm extended above your right. He gave a quick demonstration and then scowled when I just kept on walking. I sighed. I've been doing this a lot during the past few days. Don't bother with the rehearsals. I ain't playing along. We don't have royalty where I come from, and if we did, I'd sooner piss on the throne anyway. Mr. Jones, please, she begged. She had a hand subconsciously inching toward her sword. She looked like she wanted to discipline me for breaking protocol, and barely remembered that she couldn't. Yu Lang laughed between her fingers as if the sight of a smile was unbefitting of someone of her stature. Understand, Buck Jones, and the ceremony is everything for these people, she explained with a voice calm as ever. As a tool to grasp a fleeting illusion of power, one made the words and the rules instead of strength. Without such tools, the foundation of their society may very well crumble. I could read Emily's face all too easily. Despite her age, she was trying to figure out what was the threat. She wasn't that stupid, so I figured it won't take her long to come to the correct conclusion. Yu Lang continued, Miss Emily, and by extension Miss Dreisch, are responsible for your actions while you are their guests. Their positions are unstable, and they need as much illusionary power as they can. Is your pride worth causing a rift in the court? I was silent for a moment, and I thought so much of it. What if I said it was? She smiled wider. Then I would think you befitting of a new-found power. The group stopped as we reached the end of the long hall. Massive engraved hardwood doors loomed over me. It depicted dragons in a fierce battle, men with swords and various variations of those two things. How tasteless. It looks like a cheap engraving by an alleyway gunsmith for a wannabe gangster. Or maybe I was just feeling spiteful. We have reached the throne room, said Emily, stating the obvious. She stopped before the massive doors. Please, Mr. Jones, I won't hold you to your power ceremony, but I ask you to show some respect, at the very least, she said, bracing herself against the wooden doors with both hands. Whatever your culture considers as such. I didn't have time to consider an answer. As she had thrown the doors open, the heavy wood swinging open with as much aplomb as a wood could muster. I would not hesitate to admit that the sight wowed me. The hall was massive, maybe 100 feet wide and hundreds long. Massive pillars held up the roof. From each strung a banner, various crests and symbols decorating them all. The carpet was lined with red and gold and beelined straight towards the elevated throne, on which sat Yvonne, trying her best to look like she belonged. The throne seemed too far and too big for her. Along the hall were around 10 people, all of them trying their best to look important, wearing robes and capes that probably cost more than a house, largely following the ever-so-constant color scheme. Their gazes were divided, some curious, some hopeful, and some disdainful. By each pillar was a man in shining armor, holding various weapons in ceremonial poses, still as statues. I almost mistook them for simple suits of armor, but the occasional sway or twitch gave them away. We walked forward, stopping a few paces from the throne. Emily silently bowed, while Liang's clasped their fists together, bowing their heads ever so slightly. We greet the illustrious Royal Highness, they all said, in perfect unison. I guess that left me. I really didn't think about it, and I already forgot how to bow, so I decided to show respect the only way I know. I tipped my hat. Howdy. Yvonne nodded. Most of the crowd didn't react with anything other than mild curiosity. I suppose they expected a man from another country to have a different ceremony, save for one. A tall blond man scanned us, his eyes seeing weaknesses he thought he had found in me. He stepped forward, voice challenging. Is that how you show respect in your kingdoms? You want to play fool politics? Fine. If that's the highest honor I can give, then you are implying that my people are lesser for it? He grimaced but did not back down. Of course not, but while in our kingdom, I interrupted him, raised my voice, and began to spew bullshit. Where I'm from, an insult to my honor can only be solved with a duel. Is that what you wish? He blanched, and then the princess finally stepped in. Enough, Lord Huffman. Do not antagonize my guests. We have far more important business to discuss. We cannot waste time posturing. Lord Huffman huffed while he fell silent. I wondered about the politics at play, but not enough to really care. I'd ask Jeff about it later, and he would probably have some eerily accurate insight into the situation. Yvonne gathered herself for a moment and began to speak. We welcome Sectmaster Lulang, Taoist Lao Lang, and Mr. Jones. The Sectmaster has agreed to an indefinite alliance with our kingdom. He'll be assisting us in combating the corruption, she stated, voice carrying throughout the hall in a way that defied logic. Some of the surrounding people looked surprised. Others didn't bat an eye. It didn't take a genius to notice that the people on the opposite ends of the hall had opposite reactions. Huffman was on the surprise side, though I thought he was leaning more towards anger. It seemed that they were literally separating themselves, drawing a clear line between the two political parties. Mr. Jones is a silver core, she said as if it was a term new to her, capable of far more offensive power than even our strongest mages. He has agreed to lend us his power so we may take back our land. They are all our honored guests and our friends to the kingdom. Now it was everybody else's turn to look surprised, many of them looking me over as if they had just noticed I was there. I never actually said I would help, as I only implied it. I intended to, though. Huffman cleared his throat and stepped towards me once more. Your Highness, we all have our deepest respect for your enthusiasm towards our forging alliances, but how could we work hand in hand with people that do not know the light of Aldemir? We have adhered to his royal decree for thousands of years. Why forego it now? His voice was full representative and filled with false concern. Yvonne bit her lip, and obviously displays of emotion that had been a bad habit for a politician. He continued his rant. Their blood is tainted. We cannot join hands with the least of the blight defiling us. I glanced towards Emily, gaze searching. She met it and shook her head slightly. Huffman's view was extreme, but then it was not shared by everybody. Yvonne closed her eyes and held a hand out to her forehead. Lord Huffman, we are all in a different world. The light of Andamir does not shine upon us any more. You know this. The shield is gone, and we have much more direct and dangerous taint to deal with. You know this too, so why speak of it now? That very taint is my concern, Huffman said. He turned towards me, smiling as if he outplayed me in a game that only he was playing. The stranger came here from the east, correct? Although through the corrupted lands? How do we know he is not a carrier of that sickness? How could we trust his words of a vagabond? I implore you, your Highness, let us exercise caution and question him. Now, I could practically hear the air quotes around the word question, and the implication was clear. He was trying to make me a scapegoat by turning her honored guest into an enemy. Yvonne looked like she'd swallowed a roach, and everybody began to yell at once. The side opposite of Huffman, the pro-princess party, as I have dubbed it, argued against it, citing reasons like immorality and lack of justification, the general feelings of let's not antagonize the man who can vaporize us all, that sort of thing. Huffman's side, hereby dubbed the suicidal fools, spoke much of the same things Husband did, sitting Aldemir various words for sickness and tradition. The voices grew louder as the argument grew heated, and Ivone was stuck in the middle, looking like a child sitting at a dinner table caught between a failing marriage. You and Lau were both just silently standing there, hands in sleeves, slightly bemused expressions on both their faces. Yu Lang shot me a raised eyebrow, and Emily still bowed, but her shoulders were shaking in rage. I could see her lips quiver from here. Her rage probably wasn't so much about me as it was about Huffman's opposition. Right then, this kind of bullshit politicking is too much for me to wrangle, so I'll handle this my same way I handle everything. I cleared my throat and then roared, voiced like a gravel, "I warned you about the goddamn disrespect, didn't I?" Everybody fell silent at once, and Huffman turned to me, expression smug. I supposed he was goading me into a reaction, hoping to justify his bullshit. "Mr. Jones," he began, "this is exactly what I was afraid of. You are threatening a member of his royal court." This was going to be fun. Threatening. We're past that now. It's time to put your money where your mouth is. Come here and face me, or I'll just start without you. The shiny guards began to grasp their weapons, and the arguments began anew, even louder. The throne room sounded like a goddamn busy tavern now, with shouts and accusations flying every which way. Huffman continued his goading. "Duels can only take place between noblemen. You, sir, are no such thing." "5," I yelled. Yvonne spoke up. "Everyone, please, this is unnecessary," she yelled. "In no effect. This momentum is wrong. I was reminded of this moment before the tavern brawl." 4. I think this is very necessary. Emily was on her feet, gripping her sheathed sword, and she bit her lip much like a ruler does, and she looked like she didn't know what to stab. 3. Mr. Huffman, starting to notice I wasn't bluffing, began to realize the shit he was in. I'm not sure what he made him think I wouldn't kill him, but he thought wrong. "Guards, detain this man," he screamed shrilly. Some of them began to dash towards me, but most hesitated, and only a few stood stock still, Emily among them. 2. "You don't have the authority," Yvonne screamed, and some of his guards stopped as if suddenly remembering that same fact. 1. The guards weren't going to make it. Huffman lost his cool and splayed out his arms. "Your authority is false. I am the authority." He never got to finish his sentence due to the lack of a head. He wasn't using it anyway.